So I grew up really hating Jews. And to make you feel better, Jews first, Christians second. So it's Jews first, Christians second, atheists, polytheists, communists third.
What do they teach you about Jews?
You should never take Jews and Christians as friends. Jews are not are the eternal enemies of Muslims. Jews are conspiring against Muslims to take their wealth. We believed in something called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Guilty as Charged, one of my favorite books when I was young. My favorite Egyptian TV drama depicted Jews as evil, as those who are trying to come into our region to deploy a white colonialist European project that is called Israel. And I believed these lies. And I was so faithful to them. You have to know I was so religious that I memorized the whole Quran at the age of 17. I said, you can clap, yeah. I have the certificate in 1996 from Jeddah, from the school that I went to, that says Loay passed memorizing the Quran. But everything changed when I first had the encounter with a Jewish family in 2010. So everything changed by then.
So let's unpack that for a minute, because basically, as you tell your story, you went from being a very radical, very devout Muslim to basically
Salafi, Wiki is Salafi. Salafi is like someone who is like very strictly the interpretations of the Quran, which take it to a letter. And this is what we were taught. This is what I did, but this is what I knew.
So how did you go from that to being one of the most important influencers in the pro-Israel and pro-peace space?
First of all, Baruch Hashem, it's God's word. I believe that by really, listen, I'm still a Muslim, and I really love religion, and I really love faith. And I say that this void should never be left, because, spirituality and religion really feels a good, but you don't have to go all the way right or all the way left. It's something in the middle. I decided in 2010, I was 27 at that time. Now I'm 42. So at that time, I decided to learn French as a second language, because I was working in a multinational company as a software engineer, and learning French would, especially in that company, would give you a boost in your career. Like if you're working for Siemens, which is a Saudi German company in Saudi, if you learn German, you would get a boost. So I was working in a Saudi French company. So Loay, there is a program. It's called Host Family. You live with a family to improve your French, to learn French, and also to boost the language. And by coincidence, that family that I ended up with was Jewish. Never knew that, but it was an eye opening to me. And I still have the email from 2010 when I learned that they are Jews. I wrote an email to the school asking for a transfer, because how dare you cut me with a Jewish family? How dare you? I wrote nasty things in the email. I want to say one thing: when these photos of the emails and everything, they didn't come out yet. I didn't show them up yet on social media, and maybe inshallah I'll put it in my next book. When these come out, I want you to know that I'm not proud of that person. I'm not proud of the person that I was, but I'm definitely proud of the person I become. Mm-hmm. So I really changed through dialogue, through discussions, and dismantling hate in that period of time that I spent in Paris with that Jewish family. And I will say I went to Paris to study French, ended up learning Judaism and Hebrew. But no regrets. It was because it was a nice experience. It was a nice experience, really.
So how did your family and your friends and your social circles, how did they deal with this journey that
my mom, God bless her, when I returned to Jeddah, I remember that I was having a discussion with her that I'm having at that time, 2011, like when I returned for 2010. 2011 was the big boom of something called YouTube. And I was telling my mom that I'm spending more time on YouTube learning about Judaism, learning about Israel, learning about Ramban, John Sachs. Wow. And my mom was like, you are just under a slow fascination. It will just go away. It was a couple because I know you because I was so religious, like very, very religious, anti-Jewish, anti-Israel. And I told her, but I have so many questions that I didn't find answers for. And I really feel that hate was consuming me. And I think it's not the only way, it's not the way forward. And she said 2 months, 15 years, and counting. 15 years and counting. But you know how I changed? It's not just emotional. No, it's because I really found the keys to dismantle hate that I was indoctrinated with. So I swallowed the evil of radicalization, but I also had the ability to expunge it. How did I do this? By learning more from the source, not from the adversaries. I learned from I learned Judaism from the source, from the Jewish source, not from the adversary joke of Jews, the anti-Semitic Arab professors in the Gulf or in the Arab world. I also discovered so many lies that were told about the Jews, and I learned more about the history of Israel. Even though Israel, I really believe that it was a good state in 2016 when I learned that many Israelis are Arabs and Muslims. We are not taught that. We would never hear that in Al Jazeera. Israel is a Jewish state, which is correct. But they forget to add one thing. It's not exclusive to Jews. There are 2 million Arabs who work, who live in Israel, who are Muslims and Christians and Israelis. They always drop that card. I found so many things missing in a puzzle. And I connected the dots. And this is how I changed. It was not because of the family in Paris were so good in cooking, which is true. It's not because of the Jafloon every Saturday. No, it's because really, like, I believe even when I hated Jews, I was searching for God. And I believe he touched my heart. After 2011, I started my media career in Saudi. And it was a very successful career. And I always say, thank God. Really, it's God who made things work. I really changed, and that change, you can see the effect of that when I started my media career. Because from 2011, when I started my media career in Saudi, to 2019, before I started to become very vocal about my advocacy for Israel, I received 4 national awards in Saudi Arabia. And I have them all on my Instagram. You can see me receiving the awards from the Prince of Mecca, from the Minister of Education. I received the Best Education Idea in Saudi Arabia 2013, the Best Tourism Show in 2016. I was very well beloved by everyone. The moment you start, and I was the historian buff, the history buff that everyone, we want you to tell us more about the history of ancient Arabians. Who are the Nabateans? Who are the Lahyanis? Who are those Arabs who are our ancestors who lived there? Everyone was taking me as a reference. The moment you speak about Israel, no, we don't know you. We don't claim you. Who are you? And I want to tell you one thing. I started to speak about Israel from a historical point of view. When the current administration, in its first term, moved the embassy to Jerusalem, I wrote a tweet why Jerusalem is so significant to the Jewish people and why it's not significant to us as Muslims, historically. Because Jerusalem was never significant to us. Jerusalem gained its significance only after the Crusades. And I wrote so many things. It was a very historical tweet. It was so nice. Al Jazeera picked it up. Al Jazeera is labeling me as the head chief of Arab normalizers. You know what the word normalizer means for the Arab world? Someone who wants to normalize relations between Arabs and Israelis. It's like an accusation. I'm a proud normalizer, even though I'm so mad at Jazeera because they put me.
They labeled you.
Yeah, no, not for that. They put me as the first for so many years, and now they downgraded me to the 5th.
Oh,
As like a big downgrade. Why? I feel like
yeah. Now, so you wear the moniker with pride.
yeah, something like that. I know they put some other people, like some media persons, as the person.
So, you mentioned the beginning of your social media career, and you started on YouTube. Now you have 100,000 followers across multiple platforms.
Instagram mainly. Please follow me on Instagram.
Instagram.
And X.
Yeah. And so you've now emerged as one of the most influential voices that supports Israel, the Jewish people, and building the bridges of understanding required to achieve peace. What tips do you have? We have a lot of students in this room, and this is where they live. They live on these social media platforms. So, what tips do you have for our young people in the audience? How best to fight the misinformation that they see, and how can they leverage their very important voice?
So let me answer it the way I do it. Why am I defending Israel? Why am I defending, like, for example, interfaith with the Jewish people? I take it from a very vulgar perspective. I always tell my Arab audience and my Muslim audience, I defend the legitimacy of Israel because it's an integral part of my legitimacy as a Muslim power. I'm saying, well, this is why I always say, you don't have to be Jewish to be Zionist. You can also be a Muslim and a Zionist. I'll tell you, I know I'll unpack this. I defend the legitimacy of Israel because, as a Muslim, ironically, but please hold your laughs, we are 1.8 billion people. We honor, revere, respect, and name our children after Jewish prophets, kings, and heroes. We name our children and we name ourselves after individuals that we don't know anything about. Just we know that their names are mentioned in the Quran. Yeah, the Quran mentioned Dawood. I'm going to name my child Dawood, which is the Arabic equivalent of David. But who David was? No, don't get me into the details. No, I want to get you into the details of who David was. David who praised Zion. David who praised the God of Israel. David who defeated the Jebusites and moved the capital of the kingdom of Israel from Shechem or Hebron to Jerusalem on a high hill. David who said, blessed is the Lord, the God of Israel, forever and ever, amen and amen. David, who in our Quran defeated Goliath. You know who Goliath was? Yeah, he was the enemy of God. I don't know. Goliath was a Philistine from Gat. The Philistines had 5 strongholds: Gat, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gaza, and Akron. He was from Gat, and he defied the children of Israel, the prophets, kings, and heroes that you are named after. And many of those entities, as one of the Psalms say, that they dreamed of eradicating the name of Israel so that it's not mentioned anymore. It is a moral integrity of defending this legacy, of this heritage, because as a Muslim, I honor it as well. The difference between me and many Muslims recognize these facts is that, yeah, but the children of Israel in the Quran, I'm pulling from the children of Israel who are of today that are Ashkenazis, East Europeans. And I say they aren't the same language, the same rituals, the same beliefs, the same set of beliefs, and also the same holidays and the same festivals. It makes a big difference. And I want to tell you why. We as Muslims believe in Jesus. We accept Jesus. We love Jesus. And Jesus, if you study his words so well, if you study what he did in the Gospels, born in Bethlehem, Judea, raised between Capernaum and Nazareth, he wore tzitzit. He was greeted by his followers as the Mashiach, the Messiah. Muslims will say, I accept Jesus as the Messiah and I hate Israel. You don't understand that the Messiah in the Jewish mindset is the King of Israel. How could you do this? This is the lack of knowledge. And Jesus, according to our faith, was a prophet. You know how many Jewish holidays he celebrated? All. But there is one significant. The most Zionist holiday Jesus celebrated. You know what that is? Hanukkah. It's called in the Gospel the Festival of Dedication. And what is Hanukkah all about? Hanukkah is about a Jewish family, it's called the Maccabi or the Hasmoneans, who defeated the Seleucids. Who are the Seleucids? Alexander the Great died. You had the Egyptian Greeks, who are called the Ptolemies, and the Levant Greeks, who are called the Seleucids. So one of them is called Antiochus. He defied the Jews, and he said, I will Hellenize the land of Judea. And some Maccabees stood against it and said, this is our land, and we will fight for its sovereignty. So Hanukkah is not just a religious holiday. It's a religious and a political holiday. Jesus celebrated. But why say Jesus? Because we have kings in Arabia till today named Isa, which is Asos, which is, by the way, Jesus also is Joshua. And I keep this, but this is how I defend the legitimacy of Israel. Facts, knowledge, and the truth, and it's work, and it's working.
So I guess so. This the number one tip is knowledge, awareness, know who you are, and know how to explain it.
Yes, you have to know how to explain it, and you have to be proud of your identity, and you have to be also proud to be a Zionist, because Zionism is not racism. It's, you know what Zionism is in one single line. I can define Zionism in one single line, not two, three, one. The right of the Jewish people of self-determination in their ancestral homeland. Period. Why would it? Why would a Muslim have a problem with this concept if he's named after all of these the Zionist prophets? By the way, you know one of the most Zionist prophets that many Muslims are named after? Yunus. You know who Yunus was? Yunus comes from the Greek name Eonas. Eonas comes from the Hebrew Yonah, which is a dove. And he was a Zionist. I'll tell you what do I mean by a Zionist. Yonah, when he received the command of God to go to Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, he said, how could you ask me to go to the capital of my enemies, Assyria, and ask for the repentance, and I know that you would forgive them. I'm not going to go. And he escaped. He wanted to go all the way to Tarshish, modern-day Spain, because he was so proud of his identity. And yes, we love Yunus. My kid's name is Yunus. We love Yunus, but we don't know anything about him, and don't get me into the details, Loay. I love Yunus and that's it. No, you have to know. Knowledge is very important. And if you ask me, I dismantle hate with this kind of knowledge, and I realize how common. What are the commonalities that we have with our Jewish brothers? It's tremendous, enormous. If someone has a bird eye view, seeing Muslims and Jews fighting, and having the understanding of these commonalities, he would say, why are these two madmen are fighting? Why these two madmen are fighting? We have all of these commonalities. But of course, you need to have the inner battle, just like Ed had it, between what you were indoctrinated with and facts. And you need to have the courage to say, many of things that I was indoctrinated with are wrong. And I had
Okay, I want to pivot a little bit to some of your work. You go on speaking tours. You have traveled the world. You're speaking a lot on college campuses.
And that was unintentional, by the way. I want to tell you one thing. After October, when October 7th happened, I decided to speak up because I don't want to shock you. Many people in the Arab world were celebrating October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And in that morning, in that very morning, I asked myself a question. You're speaking about the Abraham Accords, peace and everything. That was time of prosperity, not the times of hardship. Will you speak up? And I said to myself, if you have really changed, you have to speak up. Whoa. There is a price. There is a price to pay. But you know, I really felt what God said to Joshua, it was said to me. You know, one of the greatest verses in the entire Tanakh, the first passage, when God said to Joshua, that I am the Lord your God, me being with you wherever you go. This is also the words of God that he said to Hagar. Hagar, when she said, okay, Sarah doesn't want Ishmael, who was a bully, in the house, and I have to kick him out, but he's also your son. And God said to Abraham and Hannah, I will take care of the boy. There is something that God will take care of you. You do the right thing, don't mind the consequences, I will intervene. And this is why I lost many opportunities in the Arab world. But guess what? I'm touring the world, speaking in Latvia, Estonia, Belgium, South Africa, the Netherlands, Italy. If you ask me in 2023, do you see yourselves? I said, what are you? Come on. I see myself speaking in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi and maybe by far Cairo. That's it. But I didn't see that coming. So God closed so many doors, but he opened more windows. I'm so grateful that he did that. And now I'm here in Miami.
Indeed, I welcome you and say,
And it's so honored to be here. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I don't take things for granted, and I really appreciate it.
so, especially in the wake of October 7th, what are you seeing on college campuses? And that's question one. And then question two, because you've traveled all over the world on college campuses and beyond, the two Jewish audiences and non-Jewish audiences, do you see any difference between what's happening in Europe and what's happening in the United States?
Yes. So in the United States, it's not bad. It's not as bad as Europe. Europe is, especially some countries in Europe, plus.
Can everybody hear him okay?
Okay. So I want to say one thing. What really, what I noticed in so many college campuses here in the U.S. that, with all due respect, many white American Gen Zs think that they know the Middle East far better than Middle Easterns. And I keep telling them, you're wrong. You don't know the Middle East far better than we do. You've never been to the Middle East. You don't know the ideology of Hamas, like someone who was indoctrinated with it and defeated. No, they are I was told that in Providence, Rhode Island University. No, they are freedom fighters. Have you read their charter? Yes, I have. I asked one student to show me the charter of Hamas, and they showed me two links. Now, it's not only that I know that they have a charter. I know that they have a watered down one and the original one. I said, show it to me. He showed it to me. I said, you haven't read it. No, it is here. And this was like, no, it's in English. You have to read it in Arabic. You have to understand how evasive they are. You have to understand that they are not fighting for a piece of land. They are not fighting for peace. Of course, for peace, according to Hamas, they want peace. But their peace is the annihilation of Israel, the Jewish people. But they are fighting because they believe that when you kill Jews, you will be rewarded. And many Americans, with all due respect, in so many different campuses, they don't get that idea. And this is why I always say to them, maybe now you condemn Israel. Maybe now you condemn the IEF. But take it from someone who knows so well. There will come a day where humanity will clap for those heroes who fought those monsters in Gaza, and they will realize that Israel was not fighting on its behalf, which was fighting on behalf of humanity.
Back to the question about Europe and the United States. Because my husband and I often debate about this. I always say, well, the United States is about 10 years behind Europe, and
No, I don't disagree. I think in Europe it's worse. And it's so annoying that many people here in the West don't get the idea that there are people who are misusing the liberal freedom that you provide. And they are using this liberal freedom to destroy the society from the within. I'll give you an example. Hamas, when they reached power in 2006, they used democracy. They won. They used democracy as a ladder. As soon as they reached the top, they threw the ladder away. No more democracy is lost that little. And we'll do and also a coup d'etat against Fatah. And when Saudi intervened to group the two groups to have a unified government, all the efforts were futile. Many radicals who come here to your country and to Europe are applying the same methods. And only with, I don't want to get into politics, but many leftists don't get it right. And they think because many of them are good humans, you have good hearts, but it's not in the right place. This is why I always say to them, I say to American students in campuses, I appreciate that you're showing empathy to the Palestinians, and I do as well. The Palestinians are not my enemy. Hamas is, radical Islamists are, Islamic Jihad is, these extremists are, because with all due respect, I know them far better than you do, and I empathize with the Palestinians, and no one would want to see Gazans die and everything, but the conditions that Hamas created in Gaza made it impossible to have not to have collateral damage. And one is too many. I understand that. And I say it with a heavy heart that it saddens every single one of us when we see innocent people die. But let's put the blame on those who deserve to be blamed. And I said it in the European Parliament. I am not going to fall into this fallacy of saying, yeah, I blame Hamas and I also blame Israel. Or in specific, I blame the Prime Minister of Israel. I say, no, I'm not going to fall into that. If you all decide to choose the Prime Minister as a scapegoat, I'm not going to do this because you have to provide me another solution. What would you do? How would you act? How would you take a decision? I'm not saying that the IDF is not making some mistakes, but I'm just saying, overall, this war is a justified war. It's a war that Israel didn't ask for, didn't want, and didn't start. And I'm not going to fall into this, we have to blame both sides to appear cool. No. My moral compass is correct. Is in the right place. The blame should solely be on Hamas. And I had a debate in North Texas University yesterday, 2 days ago, with a Muslim student who said, okay, I blame Hamas, I hate Hamas and everything, but you have to also blame the Prime Minister. So no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to blame the idea as well, because it's not a war that they started. It's a war that Hamas has to be solely be blamed for. Yeah, that would be huge. I don't really defend governments. I will say I defend the legitimacy of Israel. My problem with my surroundings, the biggest misinformation that people had about Israel in the Arab world is not this prime minister or that prime minister, is the idea that Israel is legitimate. And I will fight for this and I will take this fight till the end of days. Israel's legitimacy should never be questioned.
So I want to go back to a time before October 7th, because you came out very, very early on as a very strong voice supporting the peace process and obviously the Abraham Accords. The peace process that started with Anwar Sadat seems to have changed over time, and the focus, and we talked about it earlier. Why did the Abraham Accords feel different from the other peace processes that we've had in the past?
Sadat is my hero. May God
You that one fair.
Sadat wanted a genuine peace between Egypt and Israel. And the proof of God that he paid his life for it. Mubarak, his successor, backed away. So now I'm going to pay my life for that. And I believe he should have started with re-educating the population. So peace between Egypt and Israel, and Jordan and Israel, is not a genuine peace. I call it security agreements. But the Abraham Accords, different. And the Abraham Accords, I have to say one thing. In the domain of the Middle East, I'm not going to go into domestic politics. In the domain of the Middle East, take it from an indigenous Middle Eastern, Abraham Accords are the greatest breakthrough in American foreign diplomacy, and we have to give the credit to President Donald Trump. I don't want to get very political, but I'm talking about the domain of the Middle East. I'm not talking about other domains. But for us, President Trump and his team, Jared, Eddie Berkowitz, and the amazing people who work on that, first of all, God bless them for honoring Abraham. They didn't call it normalization deals. They didn't call it the UAE-Israel Accords. They called it Abraham. And that is so significant because Ishmael and Isaac did not communicate in their adult life. But they reconciled when Abraham died. When Isaac wrote to Ishmael that our father passed away, they both buried him in Hebron, Khalil. And the Abraham Accords for some sort of a reconciliation of Muslim-Jewish relations. And I wrote a post the other day when Jared Kushner talked about the importance of this Muslim-Jewish reconciliation, because the Abraham Accords, as I told these people to people, and you know when I really realized that, when I saw one of my cousins from Saudi sending me a video on Instagram, and I pinned his video. He said, Loay, because of your videos, I want to tell you that I'm going this Friday to Dubai to have a Shabbat dinner with an Israeli Jewish family that I got to know in JITEX forum in Dubai, and now we are friends. This is what the Abraham Accords do. They bring people to people relations. And even though we had this ugly war that Hamas started and should be solely blamed for, the Abraham Accords withstood. And because of the Abraham Accords, the UAE leveraged that by sending more aid into Gaza, because you need to have a better coordination with Israel, and built a field hospital for that. So for me, the Abraham Accords, this is why I always say I'm a big defender of the Abraham Accords, because I see the Abraham Accords are the future of the Middle East. And Abraham, that these accords were named after him, would look down to his children, be proud of seeing them working on their commonalities rather than fighting over their differences.
So you were raised, just to follow up, you were raised in Saudi Arabia. You live now in the UAE. Based on your experience and your insights, do you believe we will be able to expand the Abraham Accords in the future? And
it's not easy, especially after the war. I trust the Crown Prince. I believe he's a great leader. He really wants to have a full integration. And at the same time, you have to understand his concerns. You have to understand that many of the population became very against Israel when this war happened. And many of them, by the way, I'll be very honest as well, they are against Hamas. But they see that it's too much that is happening. And unfortunately, dealing with this kind of situation is hard. But let me say it again. I am optimistic. But I'll tell you why. The last political comment that I'm going to give. Because our Middle East is a tough neighborhood. Very tough neighborhood. For this tough neighborhood to work out so good, you need to have a tough president in the White House, and we have one.
earlier today, you shared a story that I had not known, and I'm really kind of in the weeds on a lot of this stuff. And I found this fascinating. He talked to me about why the UAE was so ready for the Abraham Accords so early on. It has a bit of history and a bit of 9/11, and I'd like you to unpack that a little bit because I think what we discussed earlier really can be a roadmap for the future.
So the president of the UAE, Sheikh Mohammed, in 2002, he was the Crown Prince. And he asked about the perpetrators of 9/11. There were 19, 15 from Saudi, 1 from Egypt, 1 from Lebanon, and 2 from the UAE. And he said, why 2 are from the UAE? I want a thorough investigation. Why 2 are from the UAE? And then the results were astonishing, that these were radicalized because of the education. And he decided to do a rehabilitation of the education system, to introduce concepts of tolerance, coexistence, commonalities that we have with different faiths, not only Jews and Christians, with different faiths. Look at the UAE now, 2025. You have a Hindu temple, you have a Jewish community, many communities with an S4, you have the Chabad, you have the SJ, you have Easter, you have many Christian denominations, you have 200 plus nationalities working in peace and harmony. Personal freedom in the UAE is untouchable. Places of worship, so secret. But that was because of the vision of the leader. Because he asked a sincere question, why 2 from the UAE were among the perpetrators of 9/11? And if you ask me, 15 from Saudi, 1 from Egypt, I understand, because I will be very honest with you, education. Many of us, I'm so sorry to say this, many of us in the Arab world felt indifferent when 9/11 happened. Some of us were even happy because Al Jazeera, by the way, is not an innocent TV channel. Al Jazeera made us believe that this was an attack against the imperialist power in the middle, the imperialist power that wants to take the wealth of the Middle East and didn't defend the perpetrators directly, but this is how it was detected. So it was a decision by Sheikh Mohammed, and he succeeded. And the UAE will play, and so sure, play a big role in de-radicalizing Gazans when things settle down. But if you go to the UAE and you see how people are welcome even to the mosque of Sheikh Zayed, people have this big or this great freedom when it comes to religious freedom. It was a decision based on thorough investigation. It led to education curricula. This is why I always say to our dear Palestinian brothers, we have to do two things. Top-down change, which is fast, by finding a Palestinian leadership that is willing to live side by side with Israel, accept Israel as a Jewish state, and stop teaching their population hate. And second approach is the mid-long term, just like the UAE did, education curricula. They have to change.
Thank you, Kateri. I wanted you to share that because for me, I think that's one of the most hopeful things I've heard in a very long time, that de-radicalization is possible, but it all starts with how you educate the next generation.
It's very important. It's very important. And we can do a lot about that. I was in South Africa with a rabbi, his name is Rabbi Raymond. We talked about how we can introduce some elements of Muslim Jewish. It is doable. The problem is it is doable, but no one have done it for a very long time because we're not communicating. But it's doable. And I'm very optimistic.
So I understand you were in Israel post October 7th and
7 times.
Huh?
7 times.
Yeah, me. And an experience that we both share is being in Kibbutz Be'eri very, very early on in the aftermath of October 7th. So can you share a little bit about that experience and how that impacted your thinking?
Let me tell you the first thing that impacted my visit to Israel. As soon as I landed, I was welcomed by a missile from the Houthis. A missile from the Houthis.
My husband and I call that the Chokh delivery.
Chokh delivery. So what did I do? I went to a safe room. I went to a shelter. You know what I realized? Wow. This is a country that is very protective of its citizens, visitors, that it built shelters for them. I hope, or I wish that Hamas would have built shelters for the Palestinians. And when they were asked, why didn't you build shelters for the Palestinians? Why didn't you hide the population in the tunnels? You know what they said? The tunnels are for our fighters. But the population of Gaza is the responsibility of the United Nations. I'm not kidding. This is a very straightforward statement by a leadership that shows you they don't care about their people. But Israel, I felt, even though I'm not an Israeli, I felt that, wow, you cannot defeat those who celebrate life. And those who celebrate life, like the Israelis, should know that they will never be defeated by those who worship death, like the Houthis and Hamas. That is the first feeling that I got, that Israel really values lives. And also when I went to Be'eri and I went to the Supernova, also devastating. I wasn't very surprised of when I heard some testimonials from people who were there, because I said I know how these people think. I know how Hamas fighters, when they went and when they invaded Israel, was not about free. By the way, October 7, FYI, you have to know, October 7 was orchestrated for one single reason: to torpedo the upcoming peace between Saudi and Israel. Simple, based on an elementary dot. Sinwar knew that this would lead to that, and he said it's worth it. You know why? Because he knew if Saudi normalizes, world, many other Muslim countries will follow suit. And he said it's worth it. It's worth the price. But he doesn't care about his people. They don't care about their people. And many people are opening their eyes when they see now Hamas torturing their own people in Gaza without trials, without prosecution. It's just like, public execution. And when you see it in Israel, it's how people died in life, how people took, You know, also, when my first visit to Israel, I visited the Terrace Center. And I said, Wallahi, big respect to Israel. Big respect. You know why? In Terrace Center, I saw the innovations that Israel gave to the world. It is absolutely unbelievable. A country of the size of New Jersey gave the world cherry tomatoes, gave the world the most used navigational app in Saudi Arabia, Waze, gave the world USB, gave the world the application that is considered the foundation of so many messaging apps, ICQ, gave the world Filicant, a country of the size of New Jersey, gave humanity a lot. And because Israel is so humane, it will prevail. It is humane to a level that they treat it similar.
Okay. Sarah, I want to open it up to questions from the audience. Maybe we could turn on the house lights and
It's 2025. America's debt is over 37 trillion, and the dollar just had its worst crash since 1973. That puts your savings and your family's future at risk. That's why we trust Alpha Omega Gold, a company that stands unapologetically with Israel and supports Stand Tall Israel. Visit ao.gold/stand to claim your free precious metals wayfinder guide or call 1-855-426-4653 today. Protect your future before it's too late.